Up in the Big Game Hunter, and you're here watching Career Coach Office Hours for October 29th. 29th? Yeah, 29th, 2021. Twice a week now, I'm spending time answering questions I've received from people about job search, hiring more effectively, management, leadership, dealing with workplace-related issues in one form or another. Now, if you have a question for me, and you haven't sent it to me in advance, you can still get the message to me through chat. So just put your question into chat, and I will try to respond to it. I'll also say that if you'd like to forward them to me in advance, I'll reply. All you have to do is email your question to me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. And in the subject line, do me a favor and put the phrase office hours. So this way I know it's one of those questions. It doesn't get lost in my inbox. I can filter it well. So I've got a bunch of questions about job search and all these other things that are available. And by the way, I'll be back on Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Eastern. So again, I've got a bunch of questions that are really good. And the first one is a great question because it's something that people deal with all the time. What if you don't have any references for a job? Now, there's a couple of reasons why you might not have references. Number one is, of course, you haven't done any work yet. You're relatively young, you have no experience, and you might just simply ask the employer, what kind of references would you be looking for? This would be really my first job. Then there's a situation where the references would be bad. Now, I'm never going to tell you to lie. Don't, because it's always exposed. But what I can tell you to do is find a coworker who would say good things about you. Because there's always someone there who can support the candidacy. If the firm went out of business, there's a lesson in that you didn't choose to stay in touch with people, and you can always find them on LinkedIn or on Facebook or on Google, using Google, and locate folks that way so you can get a reference. But let's assume that you have the bad reference from the employer. You can say to folks, hey, look, I don't know how to reach my former boss. I understand she left and has moved, but I can provide you with a reference from a coworker who could offer you information about my work and my performance and things along those lines. And then don't overtalk it. It's not just what you say that's important, it's how you say it that's important, because the message becomes, that's interesting, I don't have chat on LinkedIn here today. That's weird. I have it on Facebook, I have it on YouTube, I don't have it on LinkedIn. So I'm broadcasting to LinkedIn, but I don't have chat here. So folks, if you're watching me there, I apologize. It has to do with the tech, which I'm going to be switching off of mid-November. So back to the question, it's a situation where you don't know how to reach this person. You're involved with, you're going to have a coworker or a former coworker provide you with the reference. And that's really the best that you can do. Next question. Is it true that being an obedient employee will be liked by my boss? No. No, I'm not saying the opposite is true. Being a disrespectful employee will be liked, because it won't. But the idea that your job in life is to be obedient, which I associate with subservient, docile, just takes orders, no input from you, no advice from you, no shared opinions from you. That's not going to work either. So fundamentally, I'll just say, let me just see if that works. No, that doesn't. Sorry, I tried something to get LinkedIn chat going and it isn't working. So folks, I'm sorry. So back to you, I'll just simply say, being obedient is not the roadmap to success. Being effective, successful, hardworking, all these qualities that you've heard since you were in school a long time ago, while at the same time being able to tell an employer, hey, look, I'm not sure this is the right call. Let me just give you a sense of what I think, and then ultimately it's your decision. Is that being obedient? I think so, because it's not like they're hiring you to be a potted plant. They're hiring you for your ideas and your thinking too. Now, if you're in a job where the role of the job is to just take orders and it's physical labor, even then there's a place where you can offer your opinions. But again, being an obedient, docile person, no, it doesn't work. What's the most effective way to use LinkedIn groups to find the job? LinkedIn groups is not what it once was. But if you're going to use groups, there are two ways to do it. One, well, actually a couple of ways as I think about it. One is the members area. Now, once you join the group, you have access to all the members of the group. So you can network to people who are in your area, who have the same interests as you, and start developing a relationship through informational interviews. You can also use groups to demonstrate that you're an expert at what you do. Now, not a lot of people are going to see it because not a lot of people are going to groups anymore. It's one of those areas of LinkedIn that's kind of become fallow. But if you post an article or a video, you can share it to the group if it's relevant. Many of these groups, particularly larger ones, are being moderated, so you don't want to be sending crap there. It needs to be valid material. But you can establish authority through groups. But the big thing in terms of job hunting is just putting yourself out to contact members of the group who you think you might be able to help, and they might be able to help you. How do you find out if someone is a jerk before you hire them? I think that's linked to question number one about no references. You check references with people and see what the person was like. And one of the fun things that you can do with people is say to them, I'm going to check some of the standard references and give you some questions I think are pretty standard. And from there, I'm going to ask you one or two additional things. And just start off with, I don't know how it is for you, but when I hire people, I know they're on good behavior when I meet them. So the only thing I really have to go on is a former employer and what their experience of the person was. So I don't know about you, but I've made some mistakes and hired some jerks. So I'm kind of sensitive to that. Is so-and-so a jerk? Are they going to be a pain in the rear? And the other person is probably going to laugh. And the idea in the question is to take them off the canned answers that they've learned to give and connect as one human being to another. Make these your last questions. And if you get like the jerky response, make the point of following up by saying thank you. And from there, laugh with them and conclude by saying, if there's anything I can be doing to help you in the future, please don't hesitate to ask. Your insights into this person and what made them a jerk, because everyone's definition of a jerk is different, and what this person might be is a creative who sees things differently and doesn't tolerate BS. That doesn't make them a jerk. If anything, it makes them normal. So you have to understand what the jerky quality was that this person demonstrated. Can leadership be taught? Everything is taught. Now, if people don't have the ability to practice being a leader, that causes them to be amateurish. And thus, they're in this situation where because they haven't practiced, they just have book knowledge and they don't have a feel for what goes on. I remember as I was developing my leadership in the workplace, I got a lot of leadership experience and practice doing something completely non-work related, with the result being that my practice from the non-work related issue I brought into my workplace. And I became a lot better as a leader as a result of this volunteer work I was doing. So, can it be learned? You betcha it can be. And that's what happens for most people. No 3-year-old is a natural leader. They become a leader. And it takes practice and making mistakes and learning from your mistakes in order to be effective. Okay, let's go to the next question. What are the best ways to get top-level executive recruiters to pay attention to your career? The interesting phrase there is pay attention. Like, you're obviously at a fairly junior level to be asking about paying attention to your career, as though they are going to be up high and they're just concerned about you, and they're going to focus all their attention or some amount of their attention on you, because they're not. What they're going to do is look for experts. So become known as an expert so that search firms notice you as they have engagements that relate to the expertise that you have. Remember, there are thousands of executive search firms, and within those, there are even more executive recruiters and sourcers who are trying to find people for particular search assignments. The result winds up being that to be noticed, they have to have a search that fits you. They're going to look for people who are visible, public, well-known experts. And that causes them to see you and discover you. But they're not going to be following you throughout your career as though every Tuesday they're going to say, hey, look, Jeff has another article out. Wow, isn't that impressive? Or Joan, wow, look at, they're not going to do that. They're not going to track you in that way. What they are going to do is look for people who are visible experts and then contact them as searches go on. Yes. What is a good indication of toxic leadership in the workplace? Now, I think of this question as a wonderful question for those of you who are in job search mode. And in doing that, you want to notice certain signals that are occurring during the course of the interview that are going to give you a heads up that this might not be a place to consider working for. And thus, you want to smell these and notice some of these in the course of your interview. And don't get me wrong, there's always something wrong with every organization. After all, when you think about it, there are people who left this job that you're applying for and that you're being interviewed for. Why did they leave? And you want to know that. So, let's look at a couple of things to notice. And as you talk to potential coworkers, you might ask them about how does so-and-so respond to feedback? If they don't listen to it or they slough it off and ignore it, that's an indication of a toxic leadership culture. If there's lack of direction or clarity in the course of the work assignments, and that translates into poor results. That translates into a leader who might be impulsive and not consistent. If criticism is given publicly, it reflects bullying and can be hurtful. If some of the employees are included and others excluded in significant decisions, that's an issue. Micromanagement, it basically indicates that the manager or the leader is distrustful. If work-life boundaries are violated, like you get the 11 p.m. or 2 a.m. phone calls, and you can ask, After hours, do you tend to get calls related to work? Like, how late do they come in? So, or as someone asked me, I think for the Tuesday show, this was a person who grumbled about uh, two of their good employees leaving every day at 6, and they thought that was not a good thing. I think to myself, maybe they're married or have kids, and this person wants to chain them to the desk like it's slavery. No, not an indication of a good environment. If they overpromise and underdeliver, so schedules are crazy, and the employees are in a situation where, remember, they had an interview for the job too, and thus, if you can determine whether or not for them the role was as described. And you might ask them on the interview when they say, so do you have any questions for us? What happened to the last person who was in this job? Why did they decide to leave? Well, they got something better. What made it better? Was it purely the money? And were you friendly with them, and did they reveal what it caused them to be open to the opportunity? Sometimes it's not what they say, but the manner of the person that's revealing. And if your response is to go, oh, I couldn't ask that, then you put yourself at risk of a bad choice and winding up in this toxic place. So remember, someone was in that job before you and left. And thus, you want to be in a situation where you understand why that happened. If you notice that no one seems motivated to do anything, and the manager is telling you about how mediocre his staff is, that's his or her fault. So don't blame the staff. One day you're going to be the staff somewhere. And if your boss is complaining about you to an outsider, you've got a toxic situation that you've stepped into. If there's an indication that they don't demonstrate emotional intelligence, they're not good at listening, that they do things that offend people or put down their ideas. That's a problem, isn't it? So those are a couple of ways that you can discover you're stepping into a toxic environment. Why is work experience so important for resumes? Well, that's pretty easy. It all comes down to, what does a firm want to hire? They want to hire a solution to a problem. If you can't do the job, they're not going to be interested in hiring you. So your resume needs to demonstrate experiences that fit what it is that they want and what they will expect you to do. So that's why it becomes important. No relevance, even though you're hardworking, ambitious, passionate, all those qualities, if you can't do the job, you're not a solution for them. So your resume has to demonstrate the fit for the role, and that's why experience stands out like it does. I believe there's one more question. Yeah, this one. Why do companies hire programmers from the U.S. and Western Europe when they can hire programmers remotely from India, China, and the Philippines at lower rates? Cultural differences is one part of it. Yes, there are people throughout the world who are really competent. No question about it. But sometimes firms have had bad experiences with individuals they've hired abroad. There's the time zone issues where often you can't get a response quickly. There are language differences in how communications are done. For example, one of the complaints about working with those who are in India is they yes you to death until there's a problem. And then when there's no alternative, then it surfaces versus letting you know early on that there might be an issue. So understand there's lots of reasons from a cultural perspective. It's not an issue of skills or cost. It's about interacting with U.S. personnel that relate to time differences, that relate to cultural differences that can cause a firm to not want to do that. So, and this is specifically for freelancers or overseas employees. So I'm Jeff Altman. I hope you found this helpful. I'm going to be back on Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. with another episode of Career Coach Office Hours. If you have a question for me before then, email it to me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. In the subject line, put the phrase office hours. This way I know what it's about. I've got a lot more available for you. And if you go to JobSearchTV.com, that's my YouTube channel. It's also available on Amazon and Roku. So there's a lot of great content that you can watch. And my podcast, No BS Job Search Advice Radio, was again listed as a top podcast in the world for job search. Now, I've been on for almost 11 years as of this recording, have more than 2,200 episodes. No show is close to that in terms of number of episodes. So again, subscribe to No BS Job Search Advice Radio, wherever you listen to podcasts, and Job Search TV on YouTube, Amazon, or Roku. Now, let's see now. Is there anything else? Oh, yes. Visit my website, thebiggamehunter.us. The blog has thousands of posts there. And you can also schedule time for a free discovery call or schedule time for coaching. I'd love to help. I hope you have a terrific day. And again, be great. Take care.